In this lecture, we are discussing the conditioning of allomorphs. There are three conditioning of allomorphs: phonological condition, morphological condition, and lexical condition. So phonological condition is defined by the phonology or the phoneme or the sound, that is the preceding sound or the following sound. If there is any change in morph or the morpheme due to the adjacent sounds, so it is called the phonological conditioning. And the morphological conditioning means when we have any change or any variation in the morpheme or morph due to the morphological requirement, or we can say the grammatical requirement of that particular language. So we have change between singular to plural, that is number. We have change according to the case. We have change according to the person. We have change according to the aspect, mood, and all these and many more. So these changes occurs due to the morphological alternation. So this is called the morphological conditioning in the language. So morphological conditioning arises when the morphological structure of language or a specific lexical alteration dictate the choice of morphemic shape. So that means any morphological structure or any grammatical alteration or any lexical affiliation that dictates the choice of particular morphemic shape. So that is why we call it the morphological condition. So in English, we have the example like cats, dogs, buses. So there is a change between in the plural morpheme sa. So change from sa to za to is due to the phonological conditioning. And that phonological conditioning means the last sound of the cat is the ta, which is voiceless, and the last sound of the dog, which is the ga, which is voiced, and the last sound of bus, which is the sibilant, that is the sa. So due to that, it has different alternation or different variation like sa, za, is. But in morphological conditioning, like we change man into main to make it plural, or we change go into went to make it past. So this alternation or this variation does not occurs due to the phonology or the phoneme or the adjacent phoneme, but it occurs due to the morphological alternation. Due to the we are making the past, because we are making the past of go into will, and this past because the tense is past, so the tense require the past verb, and in the man changing the main to make it plural. So when the subject is plural, so we use the men, not man. So that is the requirement of the number from singular to plural. So there is no phonological conditioning in these examples. Some word forms like allomorphs don't follow the regular rules, so but depends on the word itself morphologically. So for morphological conditioning example, we are not going to the regular pattern of language because the phonology most of the following the regular pattern. So these forms are usually idiosyncratic form. So they are unusual in the language. So in the past, we have the example of go and went, and in the plural, we have example like man into men, ox into oxen, child into children. So these forms are morphologically conditioned. So there is no phonology involved. So morphological conditioning in English. English provides a numerous example of morphological conditioned allomorph, particularly in irregular plurals and irregular past tense morphs or the irregular past tense forms. Irregular plural. So in English, we have number of irregular plural. So these changes does not occur due to any uh, phonological requirement. It is only occurs by the morphological alternation or the grammatical requirement of that particular sentence and word. So man into change man, woman into change woman, foot into change feet, tooth change into teeth, goose change into geese, mouse change into mice, child change into the children, ox change into the oxen, sheep change into the sheep, and deer change into the deer. So there is no change in the word sheep and deer. So it is also morphologically conditioned. So there is no change. This plural pattern are morphologically conditioned because the noun like man into man, goose into geese, and child into children, they all are follow some morphological pattern, not due to the phonological condition. And sheep change in the sheep plural, so the singular sheep and plural sheep both are uh, have the same shape, same morph, but change in the morpheme. Like the plural sheep has the two morpheme. One is the sheep and other is pluralness. So that is depends on the uniqueness of the language. Or we can say that it is very unusual in a language. So does not follow any regular pattern. These variants cannot be predicted by phonology of the noun. They are lexically specified. So that means morphological conditions cannot be predicted by phonology of the language. It is lexically specified, or it is lexically it can defined by the lexical alternation, or we can say the morphological alternation. So, for example, we have the word like pen, so it becomes pens, not pen, because it has the regular plural marker sa. So for example, so in the same way, we have the word man become main. So this is not the irregular pattern to make it plural. So these patterns we could not define by any phonological alternation or by the phonological condition. Irregular plurals forms in English are not derived by rule but must be memorized or exceptions or stored as separate lexical entry. So these irregular forms in language or the irregular plural form in the language, they are not governed by any rule. They just memorize or stored as a separate entity in our mind. So that's why they call it morphological conditions. So there is a irregular past tense marker in English. So they are lexically conditioned. So irregular past like the go, went, take, took, see become saw, come become came, go become went, take become took, run become ran, eat become ate, sing become sang, sung, bring become brought, buy become bought, and teach become taught. So all these verbs are irregular in English. So they do not follow the regular pattern, because in regular pattern we are adding the ed suffix to make it plural. So in this ed suffix we have some phonological conditions to occur differently, but in here we do not have any phonological conditioning. So these are the irregular verb form or the past tense form in English. So these forms are morphologically conditioned because the choice of the past tense form depends on lexeme itself, not on phonological context. So with the lexeme or by some grammatical agreement like tense, aspect, or some like the number, we can understand the change between the go or went, or we can understand the change between sheep to sheep, or we can change understand the change between ox to oxen. So this change can only be understood by the lexeme itself, not by the phonological condition of that particular word. So we have the example as buy, bring become bring the verb bring and buy both end in ing, means ing and I. So yet their past tense forms like brought and bought differ from the irregular pattern of past morphemes, because in regular pattern we are adding ed. In the same way, we have the example like sing, sang, ring, rang. So these are also the vowel alternation. Killing, killing, these uses a different vowel. So these are also the irregular form, and they do not follow the regular pattern. So that is why they are not considered as a phonologically condition. They are the morphological condition allomorph. So here the alternation must be stored lexically. Speakers must memorize the irregular form of each verse. So the irregular form only can be memorized, not uh, determined. So that is the irregular pattern of the uh, memorization. For example, Katamba emphasizes that in such cases the morphological condition arises because the rule of past tense formation they refer to a specific lexeme or subclasses of the verb rather than general phonological property. Now we have some example of Urdu Hindi allomorphs. So they are the morphologically conditioned allomorph, or we can say that irregular or lexically conditioned plural. So when we make the admi to plural, it remains as admi. When we make the ghar plural, it remains as ghar. But on the other hand, there is a some specific marker for plural. In for masculine, we have a marker that is ladka to ladke. Feminine, we have the ya marker that is ladki to ladkiyan and machli to machliyan. So these are the example from Urdu. So they like the admi becomes admi, which is uh, which does not change its form to make it plural, and ghar become ghar. So there is no change in the form to make it plural. So these are the irregular patterns or the irregular plural in, and they can understand only by the grammatical requirement or the morphological alternation. So there is no phonological condition. There is no change. So we can add this example as a morphologically conditioned. We have another example like not all masculine nouns ending in a follow this pattern. For example, there are lots of other nouns in Urdu. They are not changing its form to make it plural. Like mama, which is singular, and mama, which is plural. They are same. But we have the example like ladka, it becomes ladke. So that is the I ending, it changed into the A. But here mama does not change. So this is the uh, lexically conditioned allomorph. So the plural formation in Indo-Aryan languages depends on both gender class and lexical exception, not merely phonology. So in Urdu, Hindi, when you make plural of any words, so it does not follow the one simple pattern like English. English follow only the regular pattern as. However, there are some exception in English like ran, en, oxen, children, deer, sheep. So, but in English, when we make the plural of any word, so it has many patterns. Like for masculine, we have ladka into ladke. For feminine, we have ladki into ladkiyan, and there are some verb which does not change. So like the word mama does not change to make it plural, it used as mama, and we have the word ghar, it used as a ghar. So in this case, morphological conditioning, there is no phonological requirement. The other form in English shows the morphological condition alternation. So, like we have the word kar, which change into kia, and which also change into kiye, and which also change into ki. So, in Urdu, when the word used as a muscular singular past, so it's become kia. So, the word kar is the basic word, so it changed into kia, kiye, kiye, according to the number, according to the tense, and according to the gender. So with the masculine singular past, we have किया, उसने काम किया या लड़के ने काम किया. With plural, लड़के, when we have the plural subject, so we use the किए, and ki for the feminine singular. And the word they, it changed into dia or the. So that alternation belongs to the morphological condition. So when you have subject in plural with masculine, so we have different realization. When the subject is plural, masculine, it has different realization. When the subject is singular with the feminine, so it has different realization. So all these changes or all these variation depends on the morphological condition. So morphological condition means we can say that it depends on the gender, number, and also sometimes tense. Now come to the lexical conditioning. Although we have discussed many examples of lexical conditioning, so some linguists also distinguish a third category, which is called the lexical conditioning. So this refer to cases where a morpheme has multiple allomorphs, but the choice is tied specifically to individual lexical items. So there are many irregular forms in English or in Hindi, in Urdu. So these irregular forms can be considered as the lexical conditioning. So we change from go to went, from mouse to mice. And these lexical conditionings are not depends on any phonological condition or morphological condition. So phonological condition means when the changes or variation depends on the adjacent phoneme. So due to the some adjacent phoneme, the sound is changing. And morphological conditioning means there is a change in form due to some grammatical or morphological requirement. When the subject is plural, so we use a different verb. Or when the subject is singular, so we use a different verb. When the subject is masculine, so we use a different verb. When the subject is feminine, so we use a different verb. So that is the morphological conditioning. But the lexical conditioning does not lie or does not depends on any all of those requirements. It is very unique and idiosyncratic. Even though we have discussed many examples of any lexical conditioning, like irregular past form, uh, irregular nouns means the irregular plural from singular to plural. And lexical conditioning occurs when a morpheme exhibit multiple allomorphs, but the choice among them is determined by a specific lexical item, not by the phonological or morphological context. So that choice or that alternation or that variation does not depend on phonology and morphology. It is unique and it is specific with the particular lexical items. So as task defined, lexical conditioning is that type of allomorph where the occurrence of an allomorph is determined by individual word or morpheme rather than general phonological or morphological rules. So when you have any alternation due to the phonology or morphology, it is called phonological conditioning or morphological conditioning. But in lexical conditioning, there is no uh, requirement and there is no influence by any sound or any other grammatical category, but it is the individual occurrence of the word, or we can say the specific quality of the word, or we can say the irregularity in the word. So, in simple terms, the alternation is idiosyncratic. Idiosyncratic means the individualness or uniqueness of particular word, or unpredictable. It is also unpredictable. We cannot predict the change by the regular pattern of the language. So it is known through the exposure and memorization. So we can only use it or we can only store this information by the memorization. Not we cannot apply any rule to just understand it or to just memorize it. So it is only uh, can be used by the memorization. So learner must store these irregular forms as part of the lexicon entry for each word. So these information can be stored through the memorization, not we can generate by the regular pattern of the language. Bloomfield described lexical conditioning as the form of suppletion, where the forms that represent a single morpheme or phonetically unrelated and their occurrence is lexically restricted. So there are some example in English which consider as suppletion. So like we have example like go change into went, and so this example comes under the suppletion. Suppletion means the main form completely changed by the other form. So the lexical conditioning, so the suppletion uh, s- pattern can be used as a lexically condition because this pattern does not follow any regular pattern. Like if you are making the plural for any verb, so you use like go become good. So it is wrong with the go. So like when you make the past of walk, it like walked. When you make the past of talk, So it is like talk. So, but in this case, it is the irregular form. Go become went. So these irregular can be considered as suppletion. So suppletion is also one of the example of uh, uh, lexical condition. So in Hockett and Katamba also define, and they emphasize that in lexical conditioning, the choice of allomorph is not predictable by rule, but must be learned individually for each lexical item. So we have discussed many times. So the alternation or the variation we cannot predict in lexical condition, but we can only learn by individually with every lexical item. So there are some irregularity in the language. So these irregularity we can only learn individually, not by the regular pattern of the language. So thus lexical conditioning represents the highest degree of irregularities in allomorphs. Now we have some characteristics of lexical conditioning. So first is the idiosyncratic distribution. So that means allomorph appear only with a specific lexeme. Idiosyncratic distribution means it is unique in their occurrence. There is no regular pattern. And there is the second characteristic is the no phonological predictability. So in lexical conditioning, we cannot predict the variation by the phonology, means by the influence of the adjacent sound. And there is no morphological predictability. So the variation cannot be understood by the morphological requirement of that word. For example, if you are making the plural or you are making the past, so you can understand those plural and past by the morphological requirement. But this lexical conditioning does not follow that pattern. And these are the lexically storage, means these irregular verb or the irregular noun only can be memorized as a part of lexicon. So we cannot generate by the some regular pattern, but you must store these all irregularity in your mind while you are using it. So when you are making the past of go, so you must memorize the past of go is when. You cannot use the regular verb like the gold. It would be wrong. So as Boych defined, the lexical conditioning represent the residual space item specific part of morphology where the stored irregularity resists generalization. So there is the item specific morphology means every irregularities or every lexical conditions are specific with every verse. So you cannot use regular patterns in this particular morphology or this particular lexical conditioning. Lexical conditioning provides several clear cases of allomorphs, especially among the suppletion and irregular forms. So in English, there are some example of suppletion that I told you, from go to went, or from am to was, or or there are some irregular pattern like child to children, ox to oxen. So these are the example of lexical conditioning. So there is an example of suppletion, like go into went, be into was, am into is are into was were, and good, better, best. So these are example of suppletion, and they are the part of lexically condition. So you cannot use, or you cannot understand, or you cannot memorize by the regular pattern all these changes or all these variation, but you have to memorize individually every item. So the verb go and its past tense went are lexically conditioned. So went historically comes from the wendom. So but the over time it becomes the past of go. So now it used as a past of the go. And the form like am, is, was, were come from different historical root but belong to one lexeme in modern English. Another case of lexical conditioning. So these all are the different form of the be verb. So now they are using in that irregular form, but once they come from the some root of the modern of the old English, so there they have the different meaning. But now they are using as a one form. And the example of suppletion is also comes under the uh, lexical conditioning and irregular plural. So English irregular plurals are the lexical conditioning. Some example of lexical conditioning in Urdu also. So when you make the plural of ladka into ladke, ladki into ladkiyan, so it follows some predictable pattern or the regular pattern to make it plural. But some examples of Hindi Urdu, like when you make the plural of admi, so it is admi as a zero, so it remains ghar. It does not change its form. So these are the irregular form, and they can be considered as the lexical conditioning. So we have another example of pani. So the plural of pani is also pani, but in some variety it can also be used paniya, paniya in the Deccani Urdu, but it is not used everywhere. So that is also the irregular pattern to make it plural. So it is considered as a lexical conditioning. And the doodh is also doodh. So there is no plural form in doodh. So the plural forms of Admi of Ghar show the lexical conditioning in Urdu as they remain unchanged irrespective of number. So that we have already discussed. So the Ghar or Admi does not change in their form when you make it plural. So it is not predictable by the phonology or morphology, but it is had to be memorized. So that's why it is called the lexical conditioning. So similarly, the word noun or noun like the pani and doodh, so they also become plural by any change in the form. So they are also called lexical conditioning. So Masika notes that such irregularities are lexically fixed in Indo-Aryan language and reflect the mixture of morphological classes and lexical idiosyncrasy. So here you can understand there are two things. One is the morphological classes and the other is lexical idiosyncrasy. So that means when you make the plural of pani into the pani and when you make the plural of doodh into doodh without any changing in the form, but you can understand that form by the sentence, by the subject, by the use of plural agreement. But it is so that is why it is also called the morphological conditioning. So it is a mixture of the morphological conditioning and lexical conditioning. So we call it the lexical conditioning because it is unique in nature. It does not have any plural marker. So if you use pani as a as a single word anywhere, so it means plural always. So that is why it has some lexical idiosyncrasy, means the lexical individualness or lexical uniqueness with that particular word. So we can consider all the lexical conditioning in Urdu. So they have feature of both morphological conditioning as well as lexical conditioning. So there is then some suppletion verb in Urdu also. So they are the lexically conditioned. So like when you make the perfective form of verb jana, so it is like gaya or hona hua, dena diya, lena liya. So there is a jana into gaya and hona and to hua. So they are example of suppletion. Because why? Because if there is a whole chain between the form. So jana become gaya and hona become hua. So that is the example of suppletion. So it can be considered as a lexically conditioned change from the base form to the perfective participle. But in this case, dena, diya, or lena, liya, it follows some regular pattern like the iya and iya. So we can just change in with ena or a here in the dena or lena by just adding the er suffix in both. So they are the regular. They follow some kind of regular pattern, but in Urdu we do not have that much regular pattern. So the alternation jana into gaya, hona into hua are lexically conditioned because the stem ja and ho and their perfective counterparts ga and hu are unrelated phonology. So they do not follow the regular pattern. They are just change or they are just replace the whole base form by jana by gaya and huna by hua. Because in this jana, the ja is the root word and hona, ho is the root word. So, but in gaya, we do not use the ja and in hua, we do not use the ho. So that is why it is the example of suppletion. So it can be considered as lexically conditioned. So there is no productive rule connecting these forms. They must be learned individually. So the lexical condition, all the example of lexically condition must be learned individually. And the Hindi Urdu such verb like jana hona is with the suppletive morphology that we have already discussed. So like in English, we have go, went, be, was, were. There is very interesting conditioning in Hindu Urdu. That is the gender marking, which is also considered as the lexically condition or the lexical condition. So in Urdu Hindi contains nouns whose grammatical gender is lexically conditioned rather than semantically predictable. So in Urdu Hindi, we are using the gender marker or the gender agreement for the non-on animate things also. So Urdu Hindi use the non-animate things, means the non-human things like kursi, pani, aag, ghar, zindagi. So they mark some gender, like kursi is the feminine gender, pani is the masculine gender, aag is the feminine gender, ghar is the masculine gender, and zindagi is the feminine gender. So all these gender can only cannot predictable by any phonology or any morphology or by any semantics. So they are lexically conditioned. They are like very we can say the idiosyncratic in the language, and they are also we can say that arbitrary in the language. So we cannot uh, predict in the language which gender should be used. And any foreign language learner, if they are learning Urdu Hindi, so they have the problem in acquiring the gender for the non-animate things. Like if I explain this example, so kursi means kursi, अच्छी kursi. पानी means uh, अच्छा पानी, ठीक? या बुरा पानी. आग means आग लगी, okay? या आग लगाई. घर मीन्स अच्छा घर, नॉट अच्छी घर, दैट वाई इट इज अ मैस्कुलिन. जिंदगी मीन्स अच्छी जिंदगी और बुरी जिंदगी, नॉट अच्छा जिंदगी. सो दैट वाई इट इज अ फेमिनिन जेंडर. So gender cannot be inferred from semantics like pani or inanimate, nor from morphology. Instead, gender assignment is lexically specified and must be memorized. So these gender markings with a non-animate thing are lexically specified. They cannot be they cannot be they are not following the regular pattern, and they are not we cannot predict this gender by the phonology or semantics or the morphology of particular language. So Hindi gender classification has a large lexically conditioned component with certain noun resisting both morphological or phonological realization. So all the gender marking with the non-animate things in Hindi Urdu are lexically conditioned. So here I conclude all these conditioning of allomorphs. So we have three types of conditioning: phonological conditioning, morphological conditioning, and lexical conditioning. So we have already defined that phonological conditioning. So any change or any alternation or any variation in the morph defined by the sound environment. So there an example of phonological conditioning like plural sa. So sa has three representations: sa, za, and is. And this differentiation or this variation based on the sound environment. If sa comes after the word ta or voiceless, so it occurs as sa. If it come after the word voiced, so it occurs as za. So the sa come after the voiceless word, so it is sa. If occur after the voiced word, not word, voiced sound, so it is at za. When it comes after the sibilant sound, so it occur at is. So that is the phonological condition. Morphological condition means it is semi-predictable and it is grammatical class based on the choice the grammatical class. So when we change the child into children or ladaki into ladkiyan, so that is comes under the morphological conditioning. So morphological condition means we can understand the change from the child to children by the some morphological pattern because it is the plural. So in the sentence, we can understand this is the plural thing. But the lexical conditioning is not depends on any morphology or phonology. It is unpredictable. And when we use the word for go to went, and when we use to for mouse to mice, or for jana to gaya, or admi to admi, so these are the example of a lexical conditioning. So that cannot be understood by any morphology, any phonology. But there is some mix in the Urdu example, like jana or gaya. They can also understood by the morphology or morphologically conditioning, even though they are the lexically conditioned. And we have also discussed in lexical conditioning the word like gender marking for non-animate things. So it is purely lexically conditioned. It cannot be understood by any morphology or phonology or the semantics. But sometimes if the native speaker uses those terms, so we can understand in sentence like achhi kursi. So you can understand the kursi is the feminine gender. But when you somebody use only the kursi, so you cannot understand either it is the feminine or masculine. So I conclude that so there are three types of conditioning: phonological conditioning, morphological conditioning, and lexically conditioning. So the phonologically condition depends on the phoneme or the adjacent sound, and it is predictable. We can predict and it follows the regular pattern. But the morphological conditioning, so they are semi-predictable, so they can understood by the grammatical requirement, by the subject, by the tense, by the aspect, by the number, by the person or gender. But they are not influenced by any adjacent sounds. So that's why they are called morphological conditioning. And they are also some rule governed. So lexically conditioned are idiosyncratic, so they are not using any regular pattern. So, and they have to must memorize all the lexical conditioning words. Like they are irregular in the language and they do not follow the regular pattern. Thank you so much.